My earliest and best memories are going to the cinema at Christmas and New Year. You had to go to the cinema because it was part of St. Lucian's celebrating the Christmas season. The cinemas themselves promoted themselves there, and they didn't have to do much promotion because it was very cultural to us. And on New Year's, it was all part of the Asu Square celebrations, and the cinema at that time. You go to the square as children, your family, you go around the square. It was very, very cultural. Everybody did it, from adults right down to children, because they would have in the cinemas shows starting from about 10 o'clock, and every 2 hours a new movie, and that goes right up to about 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. Sometimes it went right up to midnight. You come to the square, you plan your day, what movie you're going to see in that cinema, and then at what time with that cinema, and so on. Boys, what time they meet their girlfriends at what cinema. There was a cinema tradition there. That's why I was able, as children, we were able to be brought to the cinema. But the cinema tradition was much bigger than just Christmas and New Year's. Um, Christmas and New Year's was a special time, and this was special, especially New Year's Day and New Year's holiday, because people came down from all over St. Lucia to be part of Asu Square. Children for early in the afternoon, and so on. Thousands and thousands of St. Lucians. The cinemas, the two cinemas in Castries were part of that tradition. Okay, because in terms of a program, it was an informal program, but it was a traditional program in terms of how people come down to the city to celebrate. The program was going on the square, whatever, around the square, eating. There are certain foods associated with that, and so on. But part of walking through town, doing showcase, just looking through the show windows and seeing what's in the, I'm talking about thousands of people coming from all over St. Lucia down. It just was a free up day in the city, apart from, and it was all around the Asu Square and the two cinemas in terms of program of entertainment. And so lots of entertainment on Asu Square itself, traditional entertainment, but the cinema was, you can also call, the traditional entertainment. Because everybody went to the cinema. Cinema developed trends in our society and fashions and so on in our societies and our communities. A large a large reason why country and western is so much popular in St. Lucia, because of the years of an era of popularity of westerns, of the western movies. And when I growing up, that must have been the most popular movies. It gave fashion, even ways of walking of some of the younger people and so on, to walk by like the cowboys and so on. So you're growing up and you want to show that your thing. So you had a certain way of walking that just became our style of walking and so on. So you developed that. The cowboy hat. Cowboy hat was fashionable one time, and it's still fashionable in rural areas and so on. And think of it with elder men and so on. But that's where it came from, and as the cinema fostered some of that. Cinema left uh, uh, some legacy in martial arts. There's a whole era where it was Chinese karate movies that ruled the cinema. These were the blockbusters and so on. That rule anytime it came, and a different one. So there were stars. That cinema made heroes of St. Lucians. I remember people like names like Wang Yu, sword fighter. There was Chen Sing and so on. And the same thing the westerns did. So there were um, it left those trends, and it left a martial arts trend in St. Lucia, so at one time martial arts was tremendously popular. In fact, my son Akim was doing martial arts, but he got into martial arts that was established by a dojo that came from that era and that tradition, when cinema left martial art tradition and left a lot of dojos, but it's cinemas that left that. And so we have had a lot of excellent martial arts sportsmen, martial artists in St. Lucia. We have done well in regional championships and so on. But that came from cinema. It left that, and a lot of other traditions. Blockbuster movies say like The Sound of Music. Some of the biggest blockbusters, if in terms of St. Lucia, the culture I knew and of my generation, would have been um, the Sound of Music. Sound of Music crossed the generations in terms of its appeal and its popularity in St. Lucia and thing and whatnot. When that came out, that played for a long time, and families went to. Then there's Ten Commandments, this religious movie of Moses and so on with Charlton Heston and thing. That and up to today, you can still see that original movie being played, and people watch it on TV every time Lent comes around and so on. So it left, it has its legacy, its real influence on life, on culture in St. Lucia. And then the traditions of with St. Lucia, there were seasons. There were seasons, as I said, the Christmas and the New Year's, but also at Easter time. Easter, a part of Easter, and Easter to St. Lucia, in this very Roman Catholic religious countries, was watching religious movies, and the religious movies came. It came every year. Movies like King of Kings, The Greatest Story Ever Told. They came, and there were movies that played every year at the cinema, and we went families and families. So the, you know, that religious tradition was fostered through cinema, and that was how the Ten Commandments became so popular. Yeah, there were also, in terms of cinema, I should mention, because I mentioned the church. There was some church. Saint Lucia is separated because Saint Lucia was so Roman Catholic, very dominant. It is also separate. It's essentially separated into political constituencies, regional boundaries, but they are all separated into parishes as per Roman Catholic St. Lucia. Okay, so Babono is not recognized as a district, but it is a parish, by the Roman Catholic side and so on, despite the fact that Babono is bigger than some of the districts that we. Oh yeah, and the church, some parish priests invested in projectors, and they would create cinemas in the parish hall. And so there was cinema. So apart from these major cinemas, two major ones in Castries and those in Soufrière, the other town, and Vieux-Fort, the other town that I told you about, uh, there were uh, there were some communities, smaller things that they call cinemas that were set up by the parishes. They converted parish halls into cinemas. Uh, and there are some halls that are built as cinemas. Labrie, right there opposite the police station, is in the big corner there. That was a cinema. Um, in Choiseul, again right there by the main road, there was a cinema there. Now in Monrepo, um, there was a famous priest, Father Chauvet. I can remember his name. He had an established a really vibrant movie showing, well, cinema tradition in the parish hall there. It was just like Castries and so on, the times and thing, and people came and so on. And one day there was either a fight or something, and he decided he wanted to stop the cinema from thing and whatnot. And I think that caused a huge riot and everything there. But just I say that to say that there are some parish priests that developed cinema going tradition on a very much smaller scale in some of the countries. Sometimes the movie is only here for a few days and it's so popular that some people don't get inside because there would be fight and thing outside the cinema for tickets. And there were some guys who made their living from buying tickets. Well, these were the origins of ticket touts because they would go in that line and hustle their way out, fight. So I can still remember the names, some of these guys that made a living. But so they had some of the more higher class people that didn't want to go and hush for tickets and so on. So they just pay somebody to buy tickets. So some guys made their living from of this, of doing, because cinema is a part of life, and they would make these every night in that kind of way.
Is there any fun memory or incidents or anything like that that came up through cinema that stands out to you even now?
Seeing the first Caribbean movie that I ever saw. I don't know if they were so before, and I can remember it because it was Caribbean, made by Caribbean for the first time. Because cinema tradition, we just got cinemas from America and so on. Even Italian westerns were made in America, but I saw a lot in Italy and so on. But a lot of Americans got on the bandwagon of doing Italian. Okay, so in this cinema in St. Lucia, somewhere along the line came the first a movie called The Right and the Wrong. I will always remember. I think it was Trinidadian, and I went to see it. A young boy growing up, and this really Caribbean. You hate it and think some of it cliche, touristic, but it was the first time I was seeing. So I guess so. I remember that one, and following it very closely was another one called the Caribbean Fox. Caribbean Fox was a little more entertaining with a singer and so on. And, and we went to see these movies it's just to feel a sense of Caribbeanness, a sense of it. Although it was not thing in St. Lucian, but the what we can call our integration ethic in the Caribbean, it's thing that so it was very, 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 very popular, and later on um, came. Well, I think one that really pull the Caribbean together in a big way in a proud way. The harder they come from Jamaica, just starring Jimmy Cliff, the reggae icon Jimmy Cliff. Oh yes, when that came to Saint Lucia, and Rasta had become popular, had become fairly prominent and things. And the harder they came with music, reggae music, as the musical score in that movie. And some of those songs became huge, huge, huge hits. So the coming in of Caribbean movies, and especially when it was Caribbean, it stands out. But in terms of incidents and memories, there would be so many, especially associated with the Calypso 10. With the cinemas, oh, oh man, there are memories of characters. There's a guy called Mello. Remember, talked about the guys that made their living off buying tickets for people and so on. Mello was the most successful, the most famous. Mello was big, Mello was strong, Mello was the most feared. Mello was Mello was this. Everybody went to Mello because they would know they would get the thing and whatnot. And when Mello come in a line and push people out, okay, so Mello was it, But I remember if it was a popular movie, Mello would stay outside and he'd buy things for tickets for people, and people go in, so the place would pack up. Okay, but Mello would stay outside, so everybody wants to get in early to make sure they have a seat. So by the time everybody has a seat and the place is packed up, we're talking about pit. Mello buying tickets for everybody, and saying, but Mello is pit. The place is packed up, and Mello will not come in too early because he's making his money. But when this movie is about to start, even though maybe the movie started already, they're showing trailers. So you are there, and the place is packed, and you're glad you get a seat. There are people standing up on the line, and you would hear Mello's voice coming out from the thing and say, um, Salbay, when we faire, si one seat moins, sorti, après mon in English it says, okay, I have arrived. And this has been announced to the whole cinema in the English translation. Okay, I arrived. Anybody who's in my seat, get up, move, something to that effect. Something to that effect. And Mello comes in and walking up the seat, and you come to an aisle and point. Where are you coming there? The place is packed, but you would see the line opening up, and suddenly you're having a big space for Mello to sit down. Mello to sit down. The last person to come into the cinema, he got us when the people standing up on the side and everything. Mello would announce, and you don't know what seat Mello coming through. You know, so, so that stands out. That stands out. Mellow in the cinema. Oh, why? Uh, Talk about some participation, examples of participation of St. Lucians in cinema and so on, that you would never find in some of those modern in cinemas and so on. A horror movie is playing at one of the most suspenseful moments in the movie when everybody's on edge, everybody's scared, the place is quiet. You'd have, you'd have coming from somebody in pit out of the blue, and that whole cinema would be in uproar. That whole cinema in uproar. Oh yes, oh yes, yes. Participation. Oh yes. Did you ever hear that? You know. Oh, you're watching something somewhere. Something. I remember that happened right in front of me. Somebody's hand was wet, and in the middle of the thing, they watching whatever movie it was, and they touched the back of the head in the right hand, and the person just screamed, and then everybody in the bed should just jump up as though something happened. Nobody know what happened. Somebody had just and you hear another bit. Participation, and then the whole pastor around what happened. You hear the whole cinema laughing as to when they find out what happened there. Oh man, it's just I can tell you. There was another tradition that cinema planted with growing young people that was very popular in young people. We kept cards of stars, famous stars, a lot of the Western stars and Western things and so on. So, you had pictures of Alan Ladd, of people like Alan Ladd, and so those old actors. And so most young people kept those cards, um, as souvenir. But we developed a game with it, of exchange, which can exchange, called Man or Woman. Man or Woman, a card game that we beat with those cinema pictures. And you beat those cards and Man or Woman, and you show which is the top card. This is a man or a woman, and if you said no, I give you your card, and so on. So it had its rules and everything. Okay, but that game became very, very, very popular between, and it was one of the games we playing man or woman, or walking around with your cards, or showing the amount of cards you collect of the movies. But there were souvenirs of all those movies, you know, and a generation of young people kept those cards, yeah, you know, and thing and so on. So and that led a game. Game is part of the culture, and it became like a part of the culture of that time. Playing man or woman, just as we played marbles, just as we did skipping, we played man or woman with the cards, with these cards. Oh yeah. And that brings us to now, where we do have, well, the cinema tradition now, well, the cinema that's here now is a new thing, because the cinema tradition in St. Lucia got affected very much by the coming in of television. Very, 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 very much. When TV came in, TV began to pull people slowly away, and it kept people more at home. Virtually held a generation spellbound, as a lot of the new digital technology is doing now. And television came in. It took from my generation, and it really affected the cinema going tradition, which I don't think the cinema ever recovered in any big way from. It competed for a while, don't get me wrong. It competed for a while, it stayed in there, but more and more the technology and the very movies, somehow you would see it on the thing. I mean, look at Sound of Music. Sound of Music barely escaped, and now Sound of Music is popular on the television with older people because of what it did in the cinema.
From someone who didn't grow up with that kind of cinema culture, it definitely paints a picture of what it was. And I think you um, sort of tried to establish that for us as we were growing up, going to the cinema, even if it was different from what you particularly grew up with. I could definitely see those elements playing into our upbringing when we went to the cinema and stuff growing up.
I think it's a part. It was also part of my love for drama too. I think that's where it came from, for drama and theater. Oh, yeah. Okay.